Welcome to the Upper Harbor Terminal AUAR Virtual Open House. We want to thank you for attending tonight's presentation. Next slide, please. I'm Hillary Dvorak, and I'm a principal planner in the Community Planning and Economic Development Department at the City of Minneapolis. Tonight we will be talking about the Upper Harbor Terminal Alternative Urban Area-Wide Review, or an AUAR. Tonight we're going to discuss the project background, why we are doing an AUAR, what was studied in the AUAR, and how you can comment on the AUAR. The purpose of tonight's meeting is to provide information about the AUAR process and the project schedule, and give an opportunity for you to learn how to provide comments on the draft AUAR and mitigation plan. Next slide, please. So as I had said at the beginning, I'm Hillary Dvorak. I'm with the City of Minneapolis. I'm a principal city planner, and everyone else will introduce themselves now. Alexander?
Alexander, you're muted.
Sorry about that. Hello, my name is Alexander Cato, Transportation Planner with the City of Minneapolis.
And I'm Kate Lamers from the Minneapolis Park and Recreation Board, and I'm the project manager for the Upper Harbor Terminal for the park project.
I'm Brandon Champeau with United Properties.
Tom Strom with United Properties.
I'm Dana Frank, the owner CEO of First Avenue in downtown Minneapolis.
I'm Jonette Kunow, working on the traffic analysis with Kimley Horn.
Hi, my name is Tom Lincoln with Kimley Horn.
Hi, I'm Ashley Payne, and I'm from Kimley Horn, and I'll be the moderator for the Q&A portion of the presentation.
Next slide, please. So the presentation tonight will last maybe not quite 30 minutes, maybe more 15 to 20. And then we will have time for questions and answers at the end. You should submit your questions in the chat Q&A, and we will respond to them verbally at the end of this meeting. Next slide, please. So these are the instructions for how to ask a question. You would click Ask a Question, click the Ask the Question button to submit a question to the project team at any point during the presentation. You can also check the box to ask anonymously. Staff will publish questions and answers, and you can like a comment or question in the Featured Questions tab. On the mobile version, select Q&A on the upper right side of the screen to view the question box, and then follow the instructions from above. For both web and mobile version, if you lose audio, check to see if you've paused the live meeting. Next slide, please. So what is an AUAR? The AUAR process is a hybrid of the Environmental Assessment Worksheet and the Environmental Impact Statement review processes. The AUAR document uses a list of questions adapted from the EAW form, but provides a level of analysis of typical urban area impacts comparable to an EIS. The purpose of an AUAR is to analyze cumulative impacts of anticipated development scenarios within a given geographic area, and to inform local planning and zoning decisions based on environmental analysis. It should be noted that an AUAR does not approve or deny a project. Next slide, please. Why are we doing an AUAR? The state of Minnesota requires environmental reviews on proposed developments of a certain size and scale. The development proposed in the draft Upper Harbor Terminal Coordinated Development Plan meets the requirements to complete an AUAR, which is a planning tool to understand how different development scenarios will affect the environment of their community before the development occurs. The development that we are reviewing exceeds the minimum EAW thresholds. However, they do not meet the EIS thresholds. There's no specific design for each of the sites, so the AUAR is an appropriate form of environmental review. Next slide, please. Beginning in 2019, the City of Minneapolis, United Properties, First Avenue, and the Upper Harbor Terminal Collaborative Planning Committee, a community advisory committee of Northside residents and organizations, began modifying the Upper Harbor Terminal concept plan into the draft coordinated plan for redevelopment to achieve more equitable and inclusive outcomes for North Minneapolis. Next slide, please. The proposed redevelopment includes sustainable revenue streams that go back into North Minneapolis, retaining public ownership of the land, opportunities for community ownership, rental and ownership housing affordable to current North Minneapolis residents, improved access and connections to the Mississippi River, 19.5 acres of new riverfront park and trails, the Community Performing Arts Center, a Northside Community Health and Wellness Hub, commercial spaces for community businesses, 300 plus living wage jobs, and 1,200 anticipated construction jobs. Next slide, please. United Properties, in partnership with First Avenue Productions, the Minneapolis Park and Recreation Board, and the City of Minneapolis, is proposing to redevelop the 53-acre Upper Harbor Terminal site. A proposed 19.5-acre public park is included in scenarios 1 and 2 and includes shared use paths or separated bikeways and pedestrian circulation. Both developments will be built out in 2 phases. Next slide, please. So what did we study in the AUAR? There were 3 scenarios studied. The first scenario is a no-build scenario. Scenario 1 is the draft coordinated development plan, and scenario 2 is the maximum density allowed under the comprehensive plan. As you can see, the different components listed on the left-hand side of the screen, including residential, commercial, non-commercial, office and industrial space, the music venue and recreation, and then industrial storage. There are different scales of development in between scenarios 1 and scenarios 2. However, 2 aspects of the development remain constant. One is the park and the other is the music venue. Next slide, please. Under the no-build scenario, nothing would change, so no redevelopment would occur. The site would continue to be used as it is currently today. As you would see in the mitigation plan, there is no mitigation required for this scenario because no redevelopment would occur. Next slide, please. Scenario 1 is reflects the draft coordinated plan that was developed with the Collaborative Planning Committee over the last several years. Next slide, please. Scenario 2 is the maximum density allowed under the comprehensive plan. This development scenario represents the upper limits of what could be built on the site per the Minneapolis 2040 comprehensive plan. Next slide, please. The list on the screen are the topics that are studied in the AUAR. Specific to an AUAR is a mitigation plan. The draft and final AUAR documents must include an explicit mitigation plan. The mitigation plan is based on the findings of potential impacts in the resources studied in the AUAR and is a commitment by the RGU to prevent potentially significant impacts from occurring. RGU is the responsible governmental unit. In this case, it is the City of Minneapolis. Next slide, please. The next set of slides that you will see will be showing the potential environmental impacts that have been identified and then the mitigation strategies that have been identified for those potential impacts. This is a high-level review of each topic area, and all of these topics are discussed at length in the document itself. The first topic area is land use. The potential impacts that have been identified are scenarios 1 and 2 proposed land uses that are inconsistent with current zoning. Proposed outdoor amphitheater as part of the Community Performing Arts Center on Parcel 3 is not currently a recognized use in the Minneapolis zoning code. And scenarios 1 and 2 propose building heights over what is allowed under the Mississippi River Corridor Critical Area and Shoreland Overlay Districts. The mitigation strategies for these potential impacts include all parcels would require a zoning change. A zoning code text amendment to allow the outdoor amphitheater would be required. A comprehensive plan amendment to align the proposed parcels with the future land use plan and to allow additional building height specific to parcel 7. And a conditional use permit and height premiums to allow additional building height will be required. Next slide, please. The next topic area is geology and soils. And the impact that was identified is grading activities are anticipated to begin in late 2022 or 2023. The mitigation strategies for these include acquiring a national pollutant discharge elimination system, general stormwater permit for construction activity from the Minnesota Pollution Control Agency prior to initiating earthwork, and temporary erosion and sediment control measures will be implemented during construction. Next slide, please. The next topic is water resources. The potential impacts fall into 3 different categories. Surface water, so upland shoreline grading along the Mississippi River is proposed within the park area for restoration. Under stormwater management would be required for new development. And under wastewater and water supply, existing footings, foundation, and utilities may encounter some groundwater and would require dewatering during construction. Water-related infrastructure will need to be extended and or reconstructed to accommodate development. The mitigation strategies for these potential impacts include under surface water, regrading the shoreline would require permitting with the Minnesota Department of Natural Resources and the U.S. Army Corps of Engineers. Under stormwater infrastructure would comply with City of Minneapolis Code of Ordinances, Chapter 4, and individual and district system stormwater management approaches are being considered. For wastewater and water supply, a permit will be required from the Metropolitan Council for a sanitary sewer extension and permit to connect. A permit will be required from the Minnesota Department of Health for water main installation, and a temporary water appropriations general permit for construction dewatering will be required from the DNR. Next slide, please. The next topic is contamination and hazardous waste. The potential impacts identified are demolition debris and earth materials will be generated during demolition of existing structures within the AUAR study area. Construction of either development scenario would generate construction-related waste materials such as wood, packaging, excess materials, and other wastes. And scenarios 1 and 2 would generate new demands on solid waste management and sanitation services provided in the project area. The mitigation strategies identified include ensuring compliance with applicable laws, rules, and ordinances related to the management of solid and hazardous waste as required by Minnesota statute, coordination with the MPCA regarding the required plans, material handling and disposal, notice of intent of demolition for removal of buildings, and a construction contingency plan and response action plan for MPCA approval will be needed to document plans for handling unknown materials during construction. Next slide. The next topic studied is fish, wildlife, and plant communities. The potential impacts identified are the AUAR study area provides limited and low quality native vegetation habitat. Wildlife that can be found within the study area include birds and small mammals that have adapted to the highly disturbed urban environment. There are no records of state listed, threatened, endangered, and special concern species within the AUAR study area. However, black sandshell mussel, the rusty patch bumblebee, peregrine falcon, and a great blue heron nesting site are found within 1 mile of the AUAR study area. The mitigation strategies identified are the DNR concurred that negative impacts to known occurrences of rare features are not anticipated. Audubon, Minnesota bird safe building guidelines will be used to develop strategies to avoid and minimize impacts to migrating birds to the extent practical. Wildlife-friendly erosion control methods will be used within the study area to minimize impacts to land and aquatic wildlife using the site during construction. Native plantings and vegetation restoration will be used to promote pollinator habitat and wildlife habitat. And shoreline restoration on the site may improve ecological functions and remove invasive species. Next slide, please. The next topic studied was historic properties. The potential impacts include the State Historic Preservation Office concurred that the Upper Harbor Terminal site is not considered individually eligible for National Register of Historic Places, but is considered contributing to a larger potential historic district. And the Upper Harbor Terminal site has been identified as potentially eligible as a local City of Minneapolis historic resource. The mitigation strategies include consultation with the State Historic Preservation Office under Section 106 of the Historic Preservation Act of 1966 when acquiring federal funds, permits, or authorizations in a federal undertaking. Evaluate options for adaptive reuse, preservation, removal, redevelopment, interim stabilization measures for existing buildings or structures. Explore interpretive planning that allows for phased implementation and balances the significance of the site through time and across cultures. In combination of soil cores, ground penetrating radar, and shovel testing is needed to identify whether historical structures remain beneath the surface. Next slide, thank you. The next topic is visual. The potential impacts include scenarios 1 and 2 would include restoration of natural vegetation, structural tiering of buildings, and preservation of public views. The proposed community performing arts center will include outdoor lighting to be used during shows. And the mitigation strategies include all lighting will be required or will be subject to the MERCA plan requirements. The use of outdoor lighting for the community performing arts center is subject to a conditional use permit. And lighting and visual impacts are regulated through the City of Minneapolis's development review site plan and permitting process. Next slide, please. For noise, scenarios 1 and 2 include residential buildings and planned green space that are considered sensitive noise receptors. And scenarios 1 and 2 include a community performing arts center on parcel 3, which will result in elevated noise levels during major events. The mitigation strategies include construction activities will be conducted to minimize noise levels in nighttime construction activities. Permits related to construction noise will be obtained from the city if needed. An outdoor noise permit will be required before operating the community performing arts center for events. An installation of appropriate noise attenuation features in residential buildings and the community performing arts center will be required, and that can be in sites or the buildings themselves. Next slide, please. I'm going to turn this over to Alexander now.
Thanks, Taylor. Is there an echo? Can everyone hear me clearly? Okay, I'm gonna continue. So obviously with the Upper Harbor Terminal site, there's a strong need for ensuring that it is integrated in a way that supports transportation within the site and within that system. And there's really two ways of looking at the AUAR and its subsequent mitigations. With the developments that are proposed in the coordinated plan, and those developments are the Performing Arts Center, the mixed-use developments, the light industrial. It is estimated that there will be a generation of less than 6,000 trips per day, and that the intersection of Washington and Dowling will not exceed 15,000 vehicles a day. And with that subsequent level of traffic impact, next slide, please, Helene. With that level of impact, each site, as it goes through the development process, will be required to submit a TDMP. That's a very standard process that the city does for any development, and the TDMP is done to ensure that each development and its subsequent generation of traffic, as well as pedestrian, bike trips, etc., is that level of activity is able to integrate into the site. So we assess access points, volume, peak activity, etc., and ensure that those TDMP plans are going to integrate well into our transportation system. So we require that of every development. The Performing Arts Center also is required to submit an event management plan, which I'll talk about in a subsequent slide. In addition to that, with the reconstruction of Dowling Avenue, we are adding in a westbound right turn lane, extending the eastbound left turn lane, and then doing some signalization improvements. We're also adding in bike and ped facilities across Dowling as the primary access point. Across 33rd Avenue North is the secondary access point, as well as the Parkway as well. Next slide, please. And so in addition to this, there is a phase B of the mitigation, and this is if we achieve a max build, which is what is allowed under the comprehensive 2040 plan. And this is more of a kind of longer term development. If that were to occur, and in those situations, if the estimated trips on the site were to generate more than 6,000 vehicles a day, and or if the intersection of Washington and Dowling exceeded 15,000 vehicles a day, then we would be extending the eastbound and westbound turn lanes on the Dowling Bridge, as well as constructing an eastbound right turn lane at Dowling and Washington. This would be done to improve the vehicle operations on the site. This is much more of a long-term strategy. We have a lot of actions policies in our transportation action plan around reducing vehicle or single occupancy vehicle trips, encouraging transportation and active travel. So we plan to implement a lot of those policies and procedures as well through the implementation of this project. That is it for the transportation piece. At the end, I'll be happy to answer any questions about this. I misspoke. There's one more slide. I apologize for that. So this is the event transportation management framework. And so every large venue in the city, whether that's US Bank Stadium, TCF Bank, Target Field, etc., submits an event management plan similar to the TDMP I discussed on the last slide. And this is done to ensure that these large scale activities, when they occur, that the transportation system in the city is able to support them without significant delays or discomforts for other users adjacent to the area. Typically, these are done after we have a finalized construction plan, and sometimes even during construction of the actual site. In this situation, there's been a lot of public comment around better understanding how the event center will perform from a traffic standpoint. So we've been working with the developer and some transportation consultants to explore potential strategies around this event transportation management framework. So these are just ideas. This is still a framework. This is evolving, but this is something that we're developing. There's a lot of pieces on there you can see. A few of them are we're going to monitor parking within the neighborhoods to see those impacts and then provide solutions after there. We're going to be managing the on-street parking that you can see with these green dots as well. That represents the on-street parking on Washington Avenue and 2nd Street. Also looking at a shuttle and TNC staging area. So a shuttle would be similar to a coach bus that would pick up concert goers, maybe in downtown or another location away from UHG and shuttle them to the site. Also would allow some type of area for TNCs. Those are transportation network companies that Uber and Lyft. We'd be providing some place for them to drop off patrons that are going to the site. This would be, a little away from the concert venue, so as to not get. We want to kind of minimize vehicle activity going into the actual site. So that would be an off-site location. These are just some of the examples we're exploring. This is still evolving, but just wanted to share this with you. Now I'm done.
Thank you, Alexander. So this is a schedule that shows where we've been and where we're heading. In February of this year, the City of Minneapolis published the draft AUAR order and the scoping EAW. There was a 30-day public comment period for that portion of the AUAR that went from February 16th to March 18th. February through May, the City of Minneapolis prepared the draft AUAR. In May of this year, the City of Minneapolis published the draft AUAR. And where we're at now is we are in the middle of our public comment period on the AUAR, which runs until June 24th. In July, the City of Minneapolis will publish the final AUAR. And then in September, it is anticipated that the City Council will approve the final AUAR. And then construction is anticipated to start in 2022 or 2023. So how can you comment on the AUAR? All comments need to come in writing. You can send the comments to me. I am the point of contact for the AUAR for the City of Minneapolis as the RGU. We've provided links on this page to the Upper Harbor Terminal website and the city's environmental review page. Both of those websites contain all of this information that you can review. Next slide, please. For commenting, the city is required to evaluate and respond to substantive comments on the AUAR. Substantive comments address the content or issues raised in the AUR, such as the accuracy and completeness of the information, potential impacts that warrant further analysis, further information that may be required in order to secure permits for specific projects in the future, and mitigation measures or procedures necessary to prevent significant environmental impacts within the area when actual development occurs. The Minnesota Environmental Quality Board has published a citizen's guide commenting on environmental review projects that is available on their website that can assist you with writing comments to send to us. So again, this is, we are concluding the presentation and now we will go into the Q&A instructions, and these are the instructions for how to ask a question that one of us on this call will respond to for you tonight. And so we will leave this slide up and we will go into questions.
And we received some questions in the chat, so we appreciate everyone dropping those questions in. We will start answering them as they've been received. The first one is related to land use, and so the question is, why doesn't the plan change to fit within zoning laws instead of deciding we should amend the laws? So Hillary, could you take that question?
Thank you, Ashley. So the zoning of the site is currently zoned industrial, either I2 or I3, and which only allows industrial uses. And so to allow the uses that are proposed, we do need to rezone the site. The site is proposed to be rezoned to an I1 industrial zoning, which is our least intensive rezoning, which matches the production and processing land use guidance. And then also a commercial zoning classification will be selected for those sites that have a future land use category of park, and for parks and open space, and then corridor mixed use. So in order to align the zoning with the future land use, we do need to rezone the site. Thank you.
Okay, the next question that was received is also related to land use. Says Upper Harbor Terminal is governed by the Mississippi River Critical Corridor Area Ordinance. Since the two heron rookeries and the river are primary conservation areas, will Upper Harbor Terminal follow the MRCA restrictions on construction affecting PCAs during bird nesting and migration? Hillary, do you want to address that one for land use?
I actually may defer this one to the development team, as it is asking about when construction activities will occur. I will say that the site is governed by the MRCA ordinance. And that I don't know if Brandon wants to jump in on this one for when development is going to occur.
Yeah, I mean, can everybody hear me okay? I mean, any ordinance that's in place, that requires, I mean, any, for us to pull any sort of construction permits or anything, we would have to follow, any ordinance that's in place. So I'll be honest, I'm not normally involved in actually pulling the permits. So, that typically is our construction, or contractors, role. So I'm not familiar with every single permit that's in place, but with every single ordinance that's in place that impacts the permitting process. But if there are ordinances that do that or that are in place, yes, we would have to follow that. I can dig in more into this to answer it specifically, though.
Thanks, Brandon. The next question that was asked was climate change considered in relation to the site, i.e. heat island creation from amount of concrete, etc. I can actually respond to that one. So the two scenarios that are presented, scenario 1 and scenario 2, one being the draft coordinated plan and the other one being the 2040 comprehensive plan, actually show a reduction in impervious surfaces across the site compared to the existing condition today. The draft coordinated plan also outlines sustainability measures that will be implemented during construction and development of the overall site, which will include some green infrastructure to improve the site conditions currently. The next question that was received was a field study of birds done within the site. A field study for birds was not completed as part of the AUAR. The next question that was received, will they be using bird safe glass on the buildings? I would like to push this to the development team, Brandon or Tom.
Yeah, we will, certainly. We haven't gotten this far in design yet as far as specifying glass or even where the glass will be in the building. So I will take note of this question, and when we do get to that point with our architect, I'll ask, or we'll make sure that it's certainly considered. And I'm not sure if like normal glass that's used on the projects that we're considering is considered bird safe, but understanding that that's a concern here, that's something that we will definitely take into account. And when we get to the design process and are back in front of the community talking about specific design options, we'll be able to answer that question specifically.
Okay, the next question, how will noise from the amphitheater impact birds, and how might this be mitigated? Dina or Andy, would you like to take this question?
Yeah, thank you. So the noise study that was completed, that is publicly available on the website, showed that there would be no adverse effect to the birds, the heron rookery or other bird wildlife in the area. And that was actually shown, it would have no effect even before any noise mitigation. So our noise mitigation strategy would be, top of the line acoustic engineering, delay speakers. So not just like two arrays or X arrays coming out of the stage, but actually directed, pointed speakers throughout the crowd, including perhaps some ribboning above the crowd that you've seen on Pritzker Pavilion, and to really contain the noise in the area as much as possible. But even without any acoustic treatment, the noise was shown to have no effect on wildlife. And also just another statement that noise study is publicly available on the website, so for anyone to be able to read.
Okay, next question. Have you hired a tribal specialist to discover the true history and rights to the lands where the Upper Harbor Terminal site is located? Kate, would you like to answer this one?
Sure, although usually I guess I'm not totally familiar with the term tribal specialist. I know that there's been a lot of studies done of this entire area in the past that, you know, we partly looked at, and then we've certainly hired cultural resource consultants who can, and archaeologists who can understand kind of the history of the land and the potential for, sacred places and pathways and things like that. And then also, I guess I'm just kind of wondering with the question, also, we certainly have reached out to the TIPOs with the information about the project, and like MIAC and other indigenous organizations. I'm not sure if that totally answers all of your question. But.
Okay, moving on to the next question. Have you talked to the Northside residents about having event parking in their neighborhood, and how is this received? So this is related to the event management plan. So Alexander, could you answer this one?
Yeah, gladly. So, great question. There has been, obviously a lot of concern raised around traffic impacts with the large scale events, specifically parking. On slide 22 of the presentation, I did briefly talk about the event transportation management framework. This is still a draft that we're working on. One of the pieces in there near the top of that slide says, and I'll just quote it, monitor event parking in neighborhoods within a 3/4 mile of the event venue. So this is on the west side of I-94. It's a 3/4 mile area. The reason we're looking at a 3/4 mile, 3/4 of a mile distance is because typically that's the amount that people are willing to park and walk is around 3/4 of a mile. So we're proposing to monitor that area and assess impacts. So it's part of the framework. So to summarize, we are aware it's a concern. It's something we're laying out in the framework, something that we will be evaluating and then making recommendations based on that.
Thank you, Alexander. Moving on to the next comment. This is a long comment, but I'm going to paraphrase a little bit. Is how will the review process ensure that the MRCA ordinance defines the Mississippi Flyway as the flyway is a major North American bird migration corridor for more than 325 bird species that make the round trip each year from their breeding grounds in Canada and the northern United States to their wintering grounds along the Gulf of Mexico and the Central America. So how will the review process ensure that this critical natural resource is protected for current and future generations? For example, how will the project be structured to ensure that light pollution is not increased and the lights are out during the bird migration in the spring and fall? So there is actually a lighting ordinance identified in the MRCA plan, and so the project would need to be in compliance with that, and that was taken into consideration. The flyway zone was taken into consideration when drafting that part of the ordinance. Another question, was any consideration given to making this space an entire park rather than park business residential? Hillary, would you like to take that one?
Yes, at some time in the past, maybe 5 to 7 years ago, there was a discussion between the park board and the city council about having the whole site be a park. However, it was decided that a redevelopment of the site, including a park, would be the best path forward. So at this time, we are not considering a 53-acre park on the site.
Thank you, Hillary. The next comment is why is the city not honoring the green zone commitments it made to us since 2013? And even now, there's no real commitment in this plan to honor what the city is committed to. Brandon, Brandon or Tom, would you like to take that one, or somebody from the city?
Yeah, let me just kind of reread the question here. Why is the city not honoring green zone commitments made? Even now, there's no commitment in this plan to honor what the city committed to. I mean, I guess I disagree with, at least disagree with the second part of this question as far as the commitment. Well, I mean, I guess I can't answer on behalf of the city references here, but what I can answer on is that if you do read the coordinated plan, there is a significant amount of overlap between the green zone goals and this plan's goals, and many of the objectives and the outcomes that the community, the CPC, gave us during this process, particularly in the equitable and resilient inclusive development matrix, overlaps with and incorporates the Northside Green Zone goals. And so we do have a lot of work ahead of us as far as getting to specifics and showing how the actual projects themselves and the development of the projects will align with that. And that's, that is part of the next step of design and the engineering work that we have to do. But I'm very confident that we will be, when we get to that point, we'll be able to show the specifics of how we are working to achieve the Northside Green Zone zones or Green Zone goals. So I can't answer though on the references to the city in this question, sorry.
Thank you, Brandon. The next question is, the river provides critical habitat for many kinds of wildlife who live there or migrate through the Mississippi Flyway. How will all wildlife and their habitat be protected along the river during and after construction? How will impacts to wildlife be assessed and mitigated? I'll provide some of a response, and then I'll pass it over to Kate. As identified in the UAR, they are proposing some shoreland restoration as part of the park plan. So as far as wildlife and how it will be protected along the river during and after construction. So during construction, erosion control methods will be implemented to minimize any erosion or sedimentation that may occur during construction to protect the Mississippi River and any species living in that river. Along with erosion control, stormwater will be pre-treated prior to entering any outlets or any outlet conditions into the Mississippi River, which will improve water quality through the area or will provide water quality treatment in the project vicinity. Also, in looking at that, there will be a park created on the site, which will improve green space. They're proposing some upland restoration areas, so native plantings and kind of upland restorations to promote, pollinator species and other potential wildlife that would utilize an urban setting such as this. Kate, do you want to provide a little more detail on some of the potential shoreline restoration that you all are considering at this time?
I don't know how much more detail I can really get into at this point, but when it comes to restoring industrialized shoreline, the Park Board definitely does have a lot of experience and works with a lot of experienced partners. So we're certainly well familiar with how to kind of delicately handle a slope that has been kind of built up to be steeper than natural, and definitely is an erosion issue to keep, any of that soil or anything falling into the river. Kind of the timing of construction, how to get native plants sort of delicately established on that slope so that it doesn't have erosion, and how to build a lot of habitat in different ways along the river. There's everything from, turtles and brush nesting species, and certainly pollinators and insects and things. So I don't know how much more detailed you want me to get into, but there's a lot of techniques at every level.
Thank you, Kate. The next question is, didn't you base the finding that noise wouldn't hurt birds on the California road construction study? How is that relevant to the concert venue? I'm just wondering if Dana or Andy could provide a little more detail on the noise study that was completed for the music venue being proposed on the site.
Yeah, can you repeat the question? Sorry, my internet cut out for a second.
Yep, no, you're good. It says, didn't you base the findings that noise wouldn't hurt birds on a California road construction study? How is that relevant to the concert venue? So just more, I guess, detail on the noise study that was completed.
Yeah, the noise study was it was based on a noise study that was done specifically looking at this site and what the decibel limits would be on the as the noise expanded out of the parcel itself at the current Minneapolis noise limits. And so it found that the limit would be like around 70 dB at the river's edge. And as noise goes down, every 10 decibels that it decreases is about half the level of noise. It's not like 10 dBs doesn't equal like, one. It's not like a finite, it's a percentage basis. So as the noise decreases, it dissipates by half almost. And so, they took a look at what the noise limits would be at the rookery and at the surrounding areas, and then the impact on wildlife. So it wasn't based on anything other than the noise study done at this particular site with these particular conditions.
Thank you, Dana. Just to elaborate on that, the noise study is included in the AUAR as Appendix E. There is a couple of graphics that are included in there that show the noise modeling and kind of what Dana was talking about with the dBAs as modeled. There was a modeling point or a collection point on the Heron Rookery, as you'll note in the figures and graphics included in the noise report that do show, and a text to include in that do show that based on the modeling for the concert venue or the music venue, the noise at the Heron Rookery would be similar to the current noise for the industrial area. So the traffic, the current industrial noise for the area. So it would be similar levels at that point. Okay, moving on to the next question. The question or the comment is, where is the racial equity, anti-gentrification plan, environmental justice? How is this not a repeat of white supremacy and how it has always operated? And where's the real community ownership, not public ownership? That's not real racial equity. Brandon, would you like to take that question?
Yep, I can take that, and let me just repeat it here. Where's the racial equity, anti-gentrification, environmental justice? Well, I mean, I think that if you, or for anybody that actually reads this plan, that I mean, really starting from the project vision, from the community's values, the definition of community, just starting there. I mean, this is a project that I will say, when we started down this path nearly 5 years ago, is not close to where we are right now. And the work that we've put in here over the last few years in shaping the the plan and where we're at right now has been provided, includes significant input from Northside residents, from people that do not look like me, from cultural leaders in the North Side and others who we've been working with to shape everything that we're showing here, and understanding that there is a significant amount of trauma that has occurred in this area for decades and centuries, and that one project is not going to be able to to undo all of that. But if you do read the plan and you do try to understand what we're hoping to accomplish here, we're trying to take a significant first step in that, and it's the ways that we're doing it. Start with reconnecting the North Side to the river, the partners that we're choosing to bring into this, and making sure that they have North Side connections and can speak on behalf, can provide us perspectives on behalf of community outside of whatever their expertise is or why they're partnering with us on the project, the consultants that we are choosing for this project. Again, the values that the community gave us through the process, which effectively become the report card that we're going to be held to in every decision that we make here. And then the list of the community benefits and really how those benefits align with what the community told us our priorities. We're opening or leading this with affordable housing. We're turning a site today that is almost entirely impervious concrete into more than half of it as a new park for the North Side, and other high quality development that will bring affordable housing, that will bring people to the river, that will bring commercial space that will be owned or operated and programmed by a community partner. And then how we are attempting, I think, to address displacement and gentrification issues, which is an incredibly challenging feat for one project to do. And believe me, this is how we can find the right solutions here is what we're trying to get to. But I think that a really kind of innovative step that we're pursuing here is, one, the First Avenue ticket fee that will be charged to all of First Avenue's ticketed events, and with that fee going 100%, or the revenue from that fee going 100% back to the North Side community, that's going to generate hundreds of thousands of dollars a year. And then through the CPC process, we got the CPC to recommend that, I shouldn't say we got them, but the CPC recommended that all the ground lease payments that will be made to the city, which would normally go into the city's general fund, these ground lease payments are also going to be directed back to the community. And I'm not aware of another project in the country that has a similar setup for that. And so what happens with those funds will not be up to us. That will be up to a community organization to determine what the right thing is to do. We've talked about ideas through the CPC process as far as property tax relief or foreclosure relief. But, again, when you add those funds on top of the ticket fee, it's a great first step, and I think significantly more than what any other normal development in the city is doing to try to to lessen the impacts of displacement and gentrification, because it is a significant negative impact on our communities.
Thank you, Brandon.
Yeah, and I can add, if I can just add from the
Go ahead.
amphitheater's perspective, what we did is we looked at every single dollar that was either dollar of revenue that was coming in or dollar of expense that was getting paid, and said, okay, how can we direct this to Northside and Northside residents, Northside businesses? And so starting with, the ticket. Okay, so every dollar, every ticket that is sold you know, $3 is going to go directly back to the community for the community to spend as they see fit. There's no like restrictions or designated spend on that. And then when people come through the door and they buy food and beverage, okay, so how are we going to have those dollars spent at food and beverage? So we said, okay, Northside vendors, Northside food vendors, beverage vendors, you're going to have priority, and we're going to design, you know, the program and the space so that it's accessible and amenable to Northside entrepreneurs. And then, okay, so all the staff, how are we going to make sure that it's staffed by the Northside? We're going to do a youth training program. We're going to work with Step Up to fill every entry level job with Northside youth. We're going to all the stagehands jobs. We're going to start a capacity building program where, you know, it's not just like we open the doors and expect to be able to fill those jobs as Northside residents. We're going to start training and building capacity in a career pathways program starting hopefully in 2022 to get them ready. And we said, okay, it can't just be, you know, ticketed shows for outsiders. We're also going to do, you know, 40 to 60 days of programming. That's not, you know, programmed by First Avenue, but that's programmed by the Northside, so that it's culturally relevant and accessible and amenable to current Northside residents. So that was the process we used with the amphitheater. Every dollar coming in and every dollar going out was, you know, evaluated to go directly back into Northside residents and Northside pockets.
Thank you, Dana. Another question was air pollution impact considered? So air quality was reviewed as part of the AUAR. It was reviewed in a qualitative perspective. The one that is typically reviewed for air quality is CO or hotspot analysis. And so MnDOT has worked with EPA to identify a screening method for doing a hotspot analysis and look at the top 10 intersections in the Twin Cities metro area and require a hotspot analysis for those. These intersections around in the area are not on the hotspot analysis or the top 10 intersections for CO, so it was not reviewed from that perspective. We did look at there are multiple air quality monitors within the Upper Harbor Terminal area. We did review the information or the data that is collected as part of those air quality monitors. And during the collection or during the time of the preparation of the AUAR, air quality was considered good within the area for particulate matter and I think ozone for that. So it was reviewed. There is a section in the AUAR that does address additional information about the screening and kind of the qualitative analysis that was completed for air quality in the project area. Is there any other questions that the people on the call would like to ask? Please drop them in the chat right now. We can wait a few minutes if there's any questions or anything.
Hello. Hello. Can people hear me?
Yes, hello.
I'm on the phone, so I'm trying to figure out how to operate this. So please forgive me. I'm trying to comment. Is that possible?
Yes, is this James?
Yes, it is.
Hi, James. Yep, you are on the line.
Okay, great. So, you know, this is James Trice from Public Policy Project and Environmental Justice Coordinating Council. And so for those of you, most of the people are probably on this call. I don't even know who's all on it because I'm on the phone, so I can't tell who's here, who's not. But I would assume most of the people who are on the call in this meeting know or are aware of several, you know, we conducted several learning table meetings throughout last year, probably about 15 of them every month, 4 hours each. The developers, Brandon, Dana, the city, with Eric, Hillary, the parks, were with us in all those meetings, really, to hear what the community has to say and help the community understand what it is they're trying to do. I can attest to that fact that each the developer and all the names I just mentioned were present at every single one of our learning tables. The learning tables was created to make sure that the community has a voice in the development that's happening on the Upper Harbor Terminal. I can say that I understand the distrust, understand the history of trauma that Black and brown communities face when it comes down to development. I can understand, and I know all too well about what happens with communities around the country. I understand what happened with Rondo. I even understand, and just recently we just celebrated. I don't know if we celebrated or recognized the 100-year anniversary of the slaughter at the in Tulsa, Oklahoma, when they destroyed 38, almost 40 blocks of land and businesses that were owned by Black folks. I understand that. That's really clear. And coming into this, I can just say too that I came in with the same skepticism about, is the city really serious about making sure that we benefit from this project, that Black and brown communities in North Minneapolis benefit from this project? And we were at several meetings, and it took a while for us to begin to see that they were serious about making sure that our communities benefit. I can also say that there are community members who are holding them accountable to make sure that this is true. And so, unlike in past, I've been in meetings with developers, and they have not made as much movement on anything for communities. And I can say this was a different process. If you look at the coordinated plan, you can see at the beginning of it, and I forget what page it is, that the city of Minneapolis is meeting with civil rights attorneys to actually make it possible for this community, this project to be targeted toward ADOS, American descendants of slavery. They are doing that work. When United Properties got the bid, they called in Thor. Everybody knows what happened with Thor. Brandon reached out to other Black and brown developers around the country. Brought in Othello Meadows from Omaha, Nebraska, who was a consultant on the project for a while. He has brought in Devin George, who is a lifelong born and bred Minnesota, North Minneapolis resident who played for the LA Lakers and made money doing that, and came back and wanted to invest in his community and building housing all over North Minneapolis and other things. And he is a consultant on this project. So what I can say is that they are making an effort to change the previous trajectory that developers and cities and government usually do when it comes down to Black and brown communities. They usually overlook us. But I can tell you that this group that's here at the table with United Properties development team, the city with Eric and Hillary, the parks, and all the folks involved are making a concerted effort to make sure that we don't have the same old, where a developer wants to make sure that they develop something but don't have the community in mind. I can say that's not the case in this situation. They are making every effort. But I do want to finalize by saying this. By no means is this project going to solve all the historic trauma that's caused by previous development in Black and brown communities. It's just not going to do that. It's not going to answer all of the affordable housing issues. It's not going to answer all of the transportation issues. It's not going to answer all of the other issues that Black and brown communities are concerned about. It's not, but it's the beginning. And I think this could be a model moving forward for cities to begin to adopt how to connect with communities and work with communities to develop something that communities benefit from. They are making every effort to do so. And I'm partnering with them to make sure that communities get what it is they want. And what I mean by partnering with them is making sure that they actually listen to what community residents are saying, making sure that they hear what's happening, and making sure they know that this development must be a development that's tailored to and catered to Black and brown communities in North Minneapolis. And so that's why they're going through this process. And they didn't have to. And so I just want to say that. I'm finished. And if anybody have any questions, they can ask.
Thank you. for that comment. We did receive a couple of additional comments in the chat. So one of them is, how does this project plan to ensure inclusive development practices are executed throughout the development process and sustained once built and becomes redeveloped into a new neighborhood? Brandon or Hillary, would you like to take that comment?
I'm happy to take it. So this is, I mean, the basis for this will be the community benefits agreement. I mean, as far as the I guess legal agreement for the different components that we'll be adding here. I mean, the goal, and this is one of the reasons why we've started this. Well, one of the reasons why we started this community entity expression of interest, as well as picking, you know, a partner like Devin George to develop a major part of this project is that the goal here long term is for all of these assets to be owned and controlled and operated by local residents, so that it, you know, quite frankly, the need to have a legal agreement in place to keep a developer, you know, keep a developer at their word is not required. Not saying that that won't be the case, but you know, we've agreed and are working on a community benefits agreement that will stipulate what we need to do, and that, you know, those things will run with the projects, whether United Properties is an owner or not, or a developer or not. And then on top of that, 5-10 years down the line, as these assets are operated likely by others, not by United Properties per se, you know, the intent here is to turn the ownership over as soon as possible to organizations that represent the North Side, and we'll do what the North Side residents are looking to do. And if that's not enough, that's a major reason why the public land ownership is a key component here, because then if the North Side doesn't feel like it's being represented, the public ownership gives another option to go talk to elected officials about what needs to change. And that won't be possible if this was on private owned land. So you know, we're doing everything that we can up front, and it certainly will be more challenging as you get into the operations, because there'll be more, you know, potentially more owners introduced, or more businesses or operators, and, you know, we will be asking all of them to read the community benefits agreement and agree to do the things that agreement says they have to do. So.
Thank you, Brandon. Another comment or question that came in is, what other environmental studies will be done? Hillary, do you want to take this one?
Sorry, I'm having technical difficulties here. Yes, so an AUAR is updated every 5 years, or until all development scenarios or all development parcels are redeveloped. So it would be anticipated that we would update this in 5 years, and then possibly one more time. Or if there were any changes to the project that warranted an update, we would do that. We are going to be doing, we will do archaeological investigation on the site. We will do a local designation study for the site, and there will be a phase 2 environmental study done for the site as development prepares to move forward.
Thank you, Hillary. Are there any other questions or comments this time? All right, well, we just want to thank you for joining us tonight. The recording will be posted on the website, which is upperharborterminalmpls.com. The contact information is Hillary Dvorak, Principal Planner at the city, which is listed on the screen. So if you have formal written comments that you would like to provide on the AUAR and draft mitigation plan at this time, you can send those to Hillary at her email address listed on the screen. And then those will be included in the record for the AUAR. All right, thanks everybody.